Happy Sunday. And now that I've fixed the spelling, World Backup Day or Word Backup Day. Back up your words or back up your world, whichever it is. I don't know. I just happened to fall also on Easter. So those of you that celebrate Easter, happy Easter as well. I believe it's Easter. I think so. I don't know. Yeah, that's right. Easter. I think about that a second. The bunny holiday. Got my tea. Got some people. Yeah. We'll hang out. I'm not gonna. This is probably not gonna be a super long live stream, but I figured it's World Backup Day. I was working on some projects. I didn't really want to take the time to make a video about this, but I thought I'd have some discussion around TrueNAS. And there's a lot of commentary that I've gotten from people on it, and it'll probably be a secondary video, but I at least want to talk with all of you live to kind of flush out my thoughts on this. And it's the concept of immutability. People ask about it a lot, but I'm realizing more and more people throw the term around without understanding its true meaning in the world of tech, because there are things that are immutable. We most frequently quoted things that are immutable will be probably like death and taxes. We are not sure with our present technology here in 2024 how to escape death. Therefore, it is something that is immutable or inevitable. But when it comes to data on systems, people think, and I get a lot of requests, where's that magic box that says, don't ever let this data get deleted? And it's not that simple. It's not that simple even with your cloud storage providers when they offer immutability. It is a term thrown around in tech that needs to be a sentence, not a word. And let me explain why. Nothing in tech is immutable. Matter of fact, our whole problem and why we have backups is the fact that the stuff just breaks sometimes. And data and the bits, we're fighting against entropy. We're fighting against the fact that threat actors exist, and sometimes we'll get in there and do something. There's a lot of reasons we would love for things to be completely immutable. But the fact of the matter is, especially with technology, just because you've checked the box doesn't mean someone can't uncheck the box and delete it. The way I always look at immutability, and I might try to figure out if I'll come up with a visual to represent this, but your data as it's created, if you want that data to land on a backup or storage server where it has the immutability with it, the immutability has to come from a level above the permissions at which the data was created. So if user Tom creates the data, there has to be a higher user on the destination with more privileges than Tom that can say that data will have a retention policy of X. This is the way this works in like your cloud systems that offer immutable backups storage. Let's say something like S3, Backblaze has their lifetime cycle lifetime, and you can say all data on here cannot be deleted for 30 days. That way, the key that you create that goes into that bucket can create data, it can delete data, but technically on the back end, there's always a 30-day copy. So you can say that's 30 days of immutability, but it's not truly immutable because as the admin of my Backblaze account, I can purge things out of the Backblaze account. So technically, it's immutable in terms of the key I created for the bucket may not have permissions to delete based on the lifecycle policy I set. And it's kind of the same for TrueNAS, but it gets a little bit more fuzzy and complicated because I just did a video on ZFS replication. And there's a lot of people saying I shouldn't have used root, but I want to point something out. If you don't use root, the other option is to create a user. And I actually was playing around with this a bit to show people how it worked. So let me show you the user, which is called Tom Test that I have created. And I might do this in a separate video just to break it down. But one of the problems is Tom Test here, and let's pull up the system that actually sent some data to Tom Test. We'll log into the other system. This is the same systems I was using if you watch my video on setting up synchronization between TrueNAS servers. But we have a data protection task. And that data protection task, if we look, it's using the Tom test SSH connection. If we go to the credentials and we look at the backup credentials, there's Tom test. And we have a remote host key I set up for these demo systems. We have the SSH key pair we set up for these host systems. But the part that matters is this. Here, we have Tom test, and we have to allow sudo commands with no password, or Tom can't do this. So Tom test has to have a shell, has to be in the sudoers file. Therefore, the data that Tom test creates, and let's show the data set here. Well, actually, let's show the destination data. So we have dozer test 1, and I believe that should match over here because I think I already sent the data. If not, I can send it, do it again. Yep, there it is. There's the test 1 data. The point I have is if you look at who owns this data under permissions here, you'll notice that root owns it, even though Tom is the one who initiated because Tom's in the sudoers file. And the sudoers file means Tom has permission to delete other things on this server. That is kind of the challenge of replication. If you were to compromise the server and compromise the credentials set up, even if it's not the root credentials, it still has, that user will still have the ability and the permissions to create and delete things on there. I've been trying to find kind of a way around it, but it's kind of an interesting, I don't know if conundrum is the right term, but it's an issue, we'll just say, where the user having that ability to do that is problematic, let's just say. I don't know. This is one of those things that there's a lot of comments on there, and I see people excited that they offer sudo, but if the sudoer without password means it has all the same permissions as essentially as root, or at least you can actually limit. You can select which commands can be run, so that way they couldn't do a ZFS destroy, which would be great, but they can overwrite data with ZFS. As a matter of fact, I don't even know if you could limit them to not being able to destroy data with ZFS, because if you have to allow certain ZFS commands, how granular does it get? I'm going to be flushing this out a little bit more, and if someone knows, please let me just throw this up here. If someone, because it's not in the documentation and I couldn't find any answers in the forums that were clear on this, I will throw this email address up there. Where'd it go? The vlog Thursday at lawrencesystems.com, the one I've put on here many times before. Oh, I should click the right button. I was like, how do they go there? But if you know exactly how to solve this problem, how to have a user that's able to replicate data, but not able to purge anything off that server if the system was compromised, I'm looking for a good write-up on this because I'd like to make a video about it, but my Google foo has failed me, and their documentation just says throw them in sudoers, which gives them the permission to delete things. Hence, that whole problem I talked about with immutability of where you started, as in the user that creates the data. In this case, the user creating the data is called a Tom test. And if actually Tom test lives on this server because this was the destination. But yeah, we go to credentials, local users, there's Tom test. But as long as Tom test is in the sudoers file, Tom test also is going to have permissions to destroy things. And that's kind of the problem with it. That was just one of the first things I wanted to kind of get off my chest and talk about a little bit here, was that. Just if you know an answer, like I said, I'll leave it at this one, vlog Thursday at lawrencesystems.com. We can keep playing with other things now. My biggest issue with TrueNAS, and they have changed this by now, is the inability to have additional users to the web UI. Yeah, you can do that now. That is a fix, but it's kind of that user still has all the same permissions. So the problem is the user. So right now I'm actually logged in as admin. So if you notice on the screen here, you'll see that I have root, and then we have the admin user. I'm actually logged in as the admin user. You can see that up here at the top for admin. But that doesn't really change much other than, I mean, I could create a user called whatever I wanted, and then root currently is actually disabled. So there's that. But once again, the admin has to have the same high level of permissions to do things. Now, what would be probably a more on-point complaint, but I don't know it's a huge deal, is if you had multiple users and you could do role-based access control. But currently, whoever logs into the web UI is logging into the web UI to control all the things that I know of. There's not a way to do RBAC or role-based access control inside of TrueNAS. So they did switch it so you don't have to be root, but you have to have a high-level user that has the same permissions essentially, or it doesn't work. Could you do a shadow copy of the backup server from the main server? Then you can limit the main server have access to in the backup server. Not exactly, because that user has to have the same permissions to be able to create and move data on the data sets. So like the concept, even if you were to take it and have a read-only user or a write-only user, not read-only, but write-only, but then you would run out of space. So even I didn't see any way that I made sense to me to do like a write-only user. So like I said, I didn't come up with anything on this. I've seen this question asked in the forums many times. No one's had an answer exactly to it. And they're getting closer because they have sudoers and they have restrictions. So if we go here down to the user and we edit the user, which one? That's the admin. You want the Tom test user. Here we go. You know, allow sudo commands with no password, allow all sudo commands, or you can specify which ones are allowed. So, I mean, that's an option where you can specify, but the problem is the one you need, the ZFS commands for send and everything else, those send commands are also the like ZFS destroy command, so they could destroy your data set, whoever had access to it. The only way I can see it work would be to have a script to see it shown the data after it's backed up to ZFS. No, that actually won't work. The reason why is because this is all done with ZFS commands. So you can destroy a ZFS data set with the ZFS command. It's not the same as just deleting the data, because you could stop them from running RM, for example. Like you could say use a ZFS command. The problem is I didn't see a way to restrict them to say don't use ZFS destroy. That would be the problem. Not to mention, kind of another issue that you could run into is the data problem of, let's look into data sets here. What data sets do we have? We have test one and Tom test. This Tom test data here's oh, that's not the one I want. Your important data. Here's one right here. We have this your important data owned by root. It's already here. Let's see if Tom, even though he doesn't own this, can Tom from another server overwrite this data? Let's find out. So we got 330 megabytes of data in there. Let's go over to here. Let's go ahead and add a task. This system, demo pool, some test data, different system. Actually, I'm going to do this as a advanced setup so I can do it with a one-time. We want to do a push. We're going to choose Tom test, use sudo for ZFS. Netcat, that's fine. Some test data, destination. Currently he does not have permission for, I may have to set up another user. I think I deleted the permissions. Let me try and run this job. It'll probably fail. Yeah. I deleted the keys. Actually, I can put the keys back. I made the keys. I can put them back. Let's put the keys back. When I'm done, I tear my demos down and then I build them back up. I didn't build them back up before I started this. But I think, yeah, there we go. There's the private key. Well, you know what? I'll just build a new key pair. So let's just do that. That way we start this all from scratch. Oh, I can't delete this because I got to delete this. This is a bug I found in a release candidate. It doesn't tell you why. It doesn't pop up a little thing that tells you the why. How did I like my interview with SpaceInvader One? I don't know when that goes up, but it was great. I absolutely had a great time. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, I will admit Rsync is a solution for this. If you set it up to Rsync, you have the Rsync job versus having a snapshot run by a different user. So the snapshots, the users would have Rsync availability and could delete things via Rsync, but the snapshots would save you. So yes, using it with Rsync as a second job solves the problem. It's not the way I'd like to say it. You can get real specific in the commands for sudo, but will that specificity, I'd have to maybe find someone, maybe someone's got a write up on how this, like, can it do ZFS send, but not do ZFS destroy? I guess that's how specific of a command, and will it let me filter for that? Or is it just looking at the binary, the ZFS binary for setting that? Or is there a regex match for what commands can or can't be used? That's the question. I know you can get specific with the binary, like, or what executables, but yeah. It's tricky. Like I said, this is not an easy thing here at all. Let's create some backup credentials. Let's delete some backup credentials. Actually, can I just edit these and it'll recreate them? Probably not. That won't work. All right. We'll delete these. Tom testing. Actually, I got to set a password for Mr. Tom Test over here. Credentials, local user. I mean, there's a password. I have since forgotten it. I knew it this morning when I was testing, but that was this morning. Oh, there we go. There's a password we can set. Save. User updated. It should be Tom Test. Actually, no. This one needs to be admin. And this password, because this is to get into the TrueNAS. Then this password. This is username Tom Test. Generate new. There we go. Now it should work. See if I did this right. There we go. Reload the page. And we got some key pairs. Awesome. We're halfway there. For my threat model, consider the threat to the NAS separate to the threat from the client. Yeah, the problem is the command line. If you look at what it's sending, it's like ZFS send and all the parameters next to it to send a series of snapshots that match a certain pattern. I mean, I don't know if you can limit it to only that. That is kind of the question: is can the command be limited to exclusively that? Have I received any Zima blades? I have not asked for any Zima blades. I've kind of been avoiding some of the sponsor stuff. I just ignore, like, I know there's like a big push. There's a big push for the Ugreen stuff. And I purposely didn't reply to any of their emails for Ugreen. The Ugreen stuff is like everywhere. They sent one out, but I wanted to reserve my own opinion and do what I want with it. Matter of fact, I want to try loading TrueNAS on one, which I'm positive that you can't load TrueNAS, like if you did an agreement with them, you would have a different view. I think they have rules. I have to talk to my friends about that to see what the rules are for if you did an agreement with Ugreen, because I noticed no one's done that, but I don't know what is it, because, and this is common, companies are like, hey, the agreement is we'll send you the product, we want you to demo it with our software, which is a fair assessment, but yeah. But let's finish this thought process over here. So data protection. Now what we're going to do here is I have these data sets. We have some test data. Matter of fact, I'm going to delete these because I don't need them anymore. So let me delete the couple extra things on here. And delete this. Whoops. Yeah. Delete that data set. So I have this some test data, but over here on this one, I have test one, Tom test, your important data. Now, your important data does not belong to Tom, by the way. This is a data set that exists. So my goal as a person who has taken over the source TrueNAS is to destroy your important data on the destination one. So we see we have your important data, and there's 330 megabytes of data in there. And this one has 650 megabytes. So what happens when I point it at an existing data set? Can we destroy it? We don't have permissions for it. We're not the owner of that one. We use the user Tom test. But let's first do this. We're going to go here and data protection. Let's just create a quick task. Source, this system. Some test data. Different system. Tom testing. And we'll choose this. We'll call this one YouTube Live. So this is us just making sure this works. I'm just creating a new, send this data over here. YouTube Live Demo 1. Next. And I just need to run once. Save. Replication is started. And all right, it finished. So we sent the data over to this system. Let's just go ahead and refresh the page here. And there's our 650 megs of YouTube Live demo. And by the way, noticed it's owned by root again over here. So yes, this is all TrueNAS SCALE. Oh, good. So someone did load that on there. Cool. I'm glad to know it works, because now I'm curious, because I mean, if it's a good budget hardware for TrueNAS, then it becomes more interesting to me. But let's go back over and now see if the goal next is to take this current existing data that we do not own and we did not create, called your important data. Can we overwrite this data? So let's go ahead and add another task. Source, destination, different. Tom testing. Some test data. We're going to write it over to the your important data. And we'll call this one overwrite. Overwrite your important data. Seems like a good task. Next, we'll just do another run once job. I just need to send it over once. Go ahead and hit save. Destination snapshots are not related to replicated snapshots. Confirm. I would like to just go ahead and overwrite. Replication overwrite. All right. So now it's project overwrite that data. Just overwrote that data. So let's go ahead and before we refresh, we see the 330 megs versus it should be 650. So let's go ahead and just refresh this page. And there we go. Whoops. We've deleted what was there and replaced it with something else. So the exact threat model that I was talking about is very real. If someone takes over your source TrueNAS, they could manipulate and change where your destination data is going, and that would be bad. And because you have to have a user and a sudoers file, it is allowed to overwrite any other data, even the data that user doesn't have access to or own on the destination TrueNAS. That is the problem I have. Like, I don't see a way around that right now. When using TrueNAS as a target storage for VMs over NFS, what happens when I do a snapshot? Guess my VMs will be backed up in a powered state. That is correct. If you do a snapshot on ZFS and an NFS share, they're in a powered state, and you don't know what data in flight may have been messed up. It's not the most ideal situation. It's not the ideal way to back them up. It can be good for coming back to a certain version, but you just have to know and be able to unwind those transactions to be able to do it. That's the tricky part of it all. But yeah, this, like I said, this is why there's not a magicness to immutability in here. But where there is some immutability in TrueNAS, and I have an older video on this, I'll probably make a new one just so we have a new version. One of the things when you're setting up data in here, and let me, which one of these has a share in it? None of these. Do any of these? Well, let's just create a data. Well, let's create a data set with a share on it. So we'll add a data set, some SMB share. If you create a data set with a share, and we'll make this SMB, just let it do all the default attributions here. And then we take this share and we manage snapshot tasks. We'll say we'll add a snapshot task. So there's our some SMB share. We want to have a snapshot lifetime of, we'll say, a week. And we want this to run like every hour. Easy enough. Actually, we'll say I only want to keep 1 day as so I don't, if I forget this, it won't fill up or have some other problem that I got to delete. But now we can say now every hour this thing takes a snapshot. This is where, when we go back over to the share, so let's go back over to our data set, and we can see this one here, and we can see its role is set up as a share. We manage the SMB share. We edit the SMB share. We go under advanced options. And let me make it big enough so you can read this. And right here, host enabled, export ZFS snapshots as shadow copy for VSS clients, shadow copies. And it just leaks you to the Microsoft page for shadow copies. Now, this is something beautiful in TrueNAS. Even if you tie this to Active Directory, this will still work. The shares have snapshots. The snapshots present as VSS in Windows. So if a threat actor gets a hold of the Windows network and they attack those shares, they encrypt those shares, do the thing they do, you are able to go through the snapshots, which are immutable because they're not at the same permission as the user creating it. So the SMB shares are whatever user permission. It doesn't have to be a user in TrueNAS if you tie it to Active Directory. It's whatever AD user. The snapshots are controlled by essentially the root user of the TrueNAS machine. And if you're smart, you're not putting the root user of your TrueNAS the same as any root user in your Windows machine. You're not sharing passwords. You have a unique control plane login for your TrueNAS, your root user for TrueNAS, or admin. You can use admin, which has those same high level permissions on the TrueNAS that will do it. So that should work fine for considering it immutable on TrueNAS for doing a Windows share. It's only the ZFS replication that I'm kind of stuck on. Things like this work beautiful in TrueNAS, or I did mention doing like the S3 MinIO. You can make those immutable because the user you create for the S3 buckets is not the same user as TrueNAS. So you can have a snapshot policy on your S3 bucket, which also will give you immutability on it. Sudo rules can see the subcommand, but that does not protect against overwrite. Okay. When using TrueNAS as a target storage for VMs over NFS, what happens when I do? Oh, yeah, that's the one I answered. I use your early video for my local share. Snapshots are immutable as far as the client is concerned. Yes. What having script that checks for destroy before running the command in the sudo permissions give access to a script, but not ZFS command. Well, the problem is not just the destroy. Destroy is one command you can run. But as I noted, I didn't use the destroy command. All I did was overwrite the existing target, and it also deleted it. So if the threat actor creates an empty data set and then points at all your full data sets and does a replication of an empty one to a full one, now they've also found a way to delete your data. Any tips and recommendations doing backup verification? Do I just nuke the main and see if I can bring it back? Well, I pointed this out, and I've seen people ask this question a few times. So if we go here, and I've got this way too zoomed in. There we go. If we look at the data sets on here, like here's the some test data that I have. And let's go to the data protection. And we have these two tasks right here, the replication tasks. Let's spread them out. This one overwrote the data. Let's just go ahead and I don't need this one now. Let's delete it. But what about this one here? This one took and sent, and we'll edit it real quick just to show you what it did. YouTube live demo, and it said push, and it said some data to the YouTube live on the destination. So let's look at the destination, and there's our YouTube live data. So how do we get that data back? That's actually really easy. There's two ways to do it. One is just hit the restore, and it builds a inverted version of this task. It's really that simple. This is what I demoed in the video I did with replication. This creates, pull back. We'll just call it back. Well, let's just call it restore. That's what we're doing, right? We're restoring. Where do you want to restore to? Well, let's go to here, demo pool, and we'll call this test restore YouTube live, because we're doing a YouTube live demo. So we're going to restore. We hit restore. We've created the task. We enable the task. We run. And by the way, if you didn't notice here under description, this is a pull task. This is a push task. So you just say run now. Oh, I don't have permission to pull it back. That's funny. Because that user doesn't have permission to write over here. That's actually, well, this is a weird problem. I would actually need to set up the user doesn't have permission to bring the data back, but that user has permission to send the data there. Boy, that's strange. Maybe that's a way to do it. We set up a pull job instead of a push job. Huh. That's an interesting way to look at it. Because it's trying to use that user to pull this data backwards. But essentially, the short answer is you just set up a pull job to pull the data back the other direction, and you'll be able to pull it back over here. Or you could always go to that server. So if we were at this server, this is the one that has the data. We could also run a task that does the same thing, that pushes the data back from here. So you just go over here to data protection, which there's no replication task, but you'd add one, you'd point it to say, hey, take, this system, destination, different system. There's, add the SSH connection, you run through the process, and you can push the data back to the other server. Pull moves control the target. This requires compromise yet another system. This should be good enough for accidents. Yeah. Yeah, if a threat actor can compromise the first system, it is likely they can also compromise the second one. Well, the problem really comes down to when you're over here in the system and you go to credentials, backup credentials, SSH key pairs, please note I'm showing you the private key over here. So if they have the private key, they can put that private key into SSH and send. By the way, something interesting. The private key operates through the UI here, but it doesn't save it to the disk. So kind of interesting that it doesn't get saved there. Yeah, I think the poll is the answer for probably how to do it. The downside, if they get a hold of the poll just moves the problem somewhere else. So if they get a hold of the system doing the polling also has to have access the other direction. So if you're moving which system they have to compromise, if it's a push and they compromise your source system that's pushing it to a destination, then you have a problem. But if you compromise the backup system and it's pulling from the other system, they can go backwards the other way because it has to have permission to grab the data. Yeah, you can just grab the key pairs right out of here. I know. So if they get at, basically you really have to lock down the web interface and be very careful who accesses it, because this is where the keys to the kingdom are. This is where all your problems will be. We had a threat actor. We didn't. The client did. One, my client was consulting. Indirect client. I guess they're still my clients that are consulting with us. But we did find it interesting because what the threat actor did was nothing so clever as to try to do any of these things. They just went and deleted their TrueNAS system. And they knew their backups were on the TrueNAS, but the client was using replication. So they actually had data from the replication. So they did not go further and destroy that, but they did destroy the data sets and then encrypted a bunch of things. So definitely a big mess. How is Scale doing in terms of apps? It seems like TrueCharts is not supported on the latest release of Scale. Will Scale give an option for more easy container application for home lab folks? I don't know. I don't keep up much with the TrueNAS stuff. They've done a good job of adding a lot of other applications. So they've gotten, like, their application marketplace in here is gotten substantially better. So if we go over here to apps, make sure I'm on the latest. But there is a, we'll say TrueNAS category, maybe app name. They've got a lot of good apps in here. So their support, I mean, they have 107 of them in here. So they've done a good job, I think, of having a pretty good, solid collection of apps in here. But it doesn't matter if there's 107 if there's not the one app that you need in there. So yes. As in all things, you need to evaluate the threat and then cost to remediate threat. Yep, you are absolutely right. Oh yeah, they've greatly expanded it. And my understanding is TrueCharts fixed the latest incompatibility that came with the latest version. So they've updated it, they fixed it. They don't have the same problems as they did before. But yeah, there's just a great number of apps in here. But you can still, my understanding, and don't quote me on this because I'm not using it, they did fix, I seen a tweet or a forum post that they've now updated and they're ready for 2404. Because it's, by the way, 2404 is not released yet. This is still release candidate. So for TrueCharts to get ahead of it, if you will, and are able to support the Dragonfish RC1, it's not released and they got on it. So I think that's great. Do you think I can still sell a 2016 UniFi Mesh Pro AP to a client? I'm going to say that feels like it's getting end of life if it's a 2016 model. Look up the end of life on it. I could not tell you that off the top of my head, but if you do some Googling, they do have some pages with some of the end of life things on there. But yeah, the overall, I think there's an update. The updates have gone really smooth lately too for these. I have some apps that are broken once in a while, but it's not been a big deal because like, it's not that the app itself really broke. I just had to reinstall the app, delete and reinstall it. But if you're setting the apps up properly and you're pointing them at the data directory, that completely doesn't matter. So go ahead and update this one. Which means this one needs an update too. So we'll upgrade this one. While that one's updating, let's go over here to this one. I probably have a few apps that need updating. Yep. Let's go ahead and update MinIO. See how that goes. Like I said, not a big deal. I've even had them. I've hit the rollback button and it worked fine. So one of the times the app didn't update, hit rollback, it rolled back. And then I checked it like a day later and it updated fine. We'll run an update on this one too. I could have checked a box to say update all of them. But I did not. Actually, I need to check one more thing. Cool. That's upgrading. No, I'm not backing the Kickstarter. I'm probably going to buy one when it comes out. I'll wait and just purchase one if I think it's good enough. I turned down, they wanted to send them to me and I turned them all down. Is there ways to automate the backup config? There's some forum posts on how to do it. I've never done it. And my reason why is process and procedure I have. The config file is only important to me when I make changes. So whenever I make changes, when I'm done and I'm happy with the changes, like I know this is good, I just back it up. So it doesn't need to be constantly backed up unless you're forgetful and you don't have a process. But I just, in general, pfSense, for example, really anything, if I'm configuring something that has a config, this is just a general rule. I go through, make the changes. When I'm done with said changes, I say, great, am I happy? Does this work well? Sometimes they even have to, depending on the device, may have to reboot it to make sure the changes are all saved. And then I make sure I have a backup of those changes and it goes to my backup place. So yeah, absolutely. There is a way to automate it. I've just never bothered to do it myself. This needs an update too. So let's got to update all those Linux ISOs, that I make sure are always being well seated. Yes, I am planning to review the Netgate 4200. I kind of sat on it for a while as I got busy, and we'll share a picture with everyone today. We've actually been deploying these in production. I had to stop by and grab something from the office today. And yeah, there's another one. We have we've been deploying these in production to clients. So my review is not just your average review. This is a review of Tom has been using it now for a couple months, and we now have more of these deployed in production at clients in use. By the way, all of them are great. So if you're wondering, how does it work? It works wonderful. I've had no problems with it at all. It's really been solid. We'll share this tab. And if we go over here and look closer, you'll see that this is the one at my studio here. It's also a Netgate 4200. It's actually in use here with multiple VPNs on it. So I have a PIA VPN running, a WireGuard VPN running. It works great. It's been absolutely solid. I've got HA proxy running on it. Yeah, it's no complaints at all about it. So if you're just curious, like, do I like it? The answer would be yes, I do. I've had no problems with it. One day I'll get you deploying UDMs. Yeah. As soon as the UDM does all the things that I need. I mean, come on. UDMs aren't anywhere near getting a reverse proxy built in or anything else. I just need that flexibility for things. So best option for 10 gig. I'm assuming maybe you mean pfSense. If you're asking pfSense 10 gig, I recommend the Netgate devices. The 8200 is awesome. I think it's great. There's, of course, self-building them is relatively easy to do. So what's your thoughts on 4200 running Suricata? Well, my thoughts are that, I mean, I chose to run Snort. So you see Snort running in here, down here, but you'll also notice that NTOP is running as well. So the answer is yes, the 4200 will run it, but this is always the big but. Will it run it the way you want to run it? The challenge all the time, it's not that these things won't work. It's that they do create some extra load on the system. Do you have 1,000 connections, or are you like me and only have maybe 50 connections? It can handle 1,000, but you're going to really start choking up NTOP because it won't be able to do it very well. What are you running as DNS on your pfSense? The, what do you call that? The built-in DNS services, DNS resolver. So DNS resolver is what I run for DNS and pfSense. Yay, they all updated. But yeah, DNS resolver. Here's actually all the packages that are running on this right now. So I have the Acme ARPWatch. This just comes installed. This AWS Wizard is a plugin. The HA proxy, NTOP NG, OpenVPN, PF blocker. But by the way, I'm only doing DNS blocking. I don't use it for I'm only using geo blocking. I don't use it for DNS blocking. Traffic totals, Snort, Tailscale. I have Tailscale and WireGuard. I actually have 3 VPNs running on here. So WireGuard, Tailscale, and OpenVPN are all running on here. And then, as you can tell, I have a handful of interfaces on here. But yeah, it works great. No issues at all. So the 4200 is solid. I mean, for a business environment, probably I would go to the 82. That's what we have at the office. For business environments, you want something a little bit beefier. The 8200, that would be better. This is all running as pfSense. So this isn't Tensor. This is all pfSense. one day, maybe I'll take a look at Tensor. It's not been high on my priority list because I don't really need it. And I don't have any, I may have a couple clients using it, but it's not been, it's all supported by any of the people we've seen using it. It's always supported by Netgate. So it hasn't really been an issue. No, I haven't really done much with Tailscale traffic rules. Tailscale's been doing a good job. I got to get back over to playing with Netbird. That's higher on my list right now. And then I'll come back to Tailscale. But I like Tailscale a lot because it just, the Tailscale being integrated into pfSense just makes it really, really easy. I just helped someone else solve a VPN problem with Tailscale because it was so easy for them. They messaged me. They're like, we're trying to set up these 5 locations and here's all the routing stuff. And I'm like, they're all using pfSense. I'm like, you could just solve all that with Tailscale. He's like, oh yeah. They actually had played with it before and kind of forgot about it. And I'm like, you can completely solve it with Tailscale. Have you begun deploying Wi-Fi 7 to your clients? What are your consideration for doing so? Wi-Fi 7 is too new. The biggest challenge is density. Matter of fact, I'm going to a client tomorrow to avail. Hopefully we're going to be, I think we can film this one. We're going to be able to do it on site, but it's always density. It's like the home users always want me to do a speed test, but a speed test isn't really that relevant. It's always a density and connectivity test. That's what people want. High density connectivity, not speed. In the Wi-Fi 7, I mean, it offers the 6 gigahertz now. That also means you're going to have to sell more access points. It's not that the 5 and 6 is substantially different, but 5 and 6 are much shorter range than the 2.4. So yeah, we haven't seen a ton of it, I'll say. Thank you. Mentioned WatchGuard T35 is coming up for replacement. I really think about changing. Gave you the push I needed. Yeah, there's a few different boxes out there that'll do 10 gig. 10 gig's not bad on there if you need it. We actually have not that many business clients with 10 gig in their pfSense setup. Don't run into it that much. We look at Tensor when we're building out our data center to act as edge routers. It performed very well in our testing, but ultimately went with another router. What didn't you like about Tensor? Yeah, Tensor is supposed to be really fast because it has the vector packet routing fancy stuff in it. I've read all the spec sheets on it. It does look really cool. That's why I said it's on my, the problem is there's only so many hours in the day. That's what I run into. Like I want to do all the things at once, everything everywhere all at once. But it turns out you can have it all, but you can't have it all at once. And that's what happens with all the things. I was actually playing with, I think I put it away already, some link testing tools today. And I'm like, I got to review this. I've had it for 3 months. This is where I kind of need a helper that can help me review things. And then it would be great because then they could actually do some more of the testing. The testing was what takes so long is I really take the time to validate things. Hence, the first, 40 minutes of discussion we had about the level of validation for edge cases here on TrueNAS, making sure we understand how the threat model works for potential compromise of a system. I like to really dive into it. So is there anything to address regarding the changes in Let's Encrypt, Acme, and pfSense? Not that I know of. I know the changes, but I don't think they break anything in pfSense. I don't think they made any API changes in it that would break anything. They're just root level changes. Trust me, I will know. I will talk about it because I use Let's Encrypt for things. I will certainly do a video if there is. And I'm friends with the people at Let's Encrypt. My friend works there. One of the people that lives near me. That if I have a Let's Encrypt question, I kind of can go right to the source of who writes the code and ask them. For business phones right now, OIT. Speaking of threats, hope you haven't been too busy patching XC. I made sure, or at least I thought I did, but it seems to be a popular question. I said it's pretty much only in bleeding edge, and I noted it's in Kali, which does run bleeding edge. Unless you're running bleeding edge, you're not likely to see it. So a lot of people were asking about it, but I'm kind of like, it's really not that much of an issue, because even if you're in, here's an example. They're running, I think this is running off testing. So let's look here. Shell. So this is the beta of TrueNAS, and let's go to, you know what? Let's do it differently. I'm gonna share a different screen because it's just, I hate trying to use the terminal inside of a web application. It just sucks. Window. That seems like the right window. I hope it's the right window. Let's make it big enough so everyone can see it. There we go. Yeah, they're using 5.4.1 inside of here. And if we look, she's probably just, and they're using, what is this? Bookworm. Isn't Bookworm's? Yeah, Bookworm's the same as testing right now. But I wanted to check because if you notice, they pull their own apt repositories. So here's the apt repositories inside here. So even things like the release candidate, cutting edge of TrueNAS scale is still running 5.4.1. 5.6 is where you have to have, where the problem is. So it's really not a big deal. So not really a something to work about. Also worth noting, can someone answer why I typed the word strings xz grep, and then for the version to get the version as opposed to that? Whoops. Isn't it? No. I guess there isn't. Is it not in here? Where is it? Yeah, whatever. I'm not worried about that. My point is, it's really not much of a patching issue. Yeah. Easy doing strings. I see a lot of people telling people to invoke the command as opposed to doing strings. I'm like, no. Oh, XZ, not XV. Okay, I'm just typoing. You're right. I completely typoed that wrong. Nothing specifically. It came down to familiarity. To answer is different than our locations. We work a lot of ISPs, MikroTik, Cisco, and as we normally deploy for edge routers. Makes sense. Yeah, I had actually seen I did the video and I noticed people posting like, hey, just run TAC version and see it. I'm like, if you have a potentially compromised binary, it could possibly lie about its version. That is, maybe they modified it to not say the proper version, or, I don't know. It's not the best idea if you're wondering. Okay, so Bookworm is 12. I think Sid is the only Debian version. It's like I think it's unstable. Hold on. I have this note somewhere. I think the folks over at Wiz Security, so let's go ahead and share this. They've been compiling this, which I think is great. I'll share it with all of you. Wiz is starting to make a list of things here. So there's the link thrown in the chat. So no Debian stable versions are going to be effective. Affected versions from 5.5 alpha uploaded on 224.2561. So it's not unstable. Looks like it's an Alpine, Arch, and Gen 2. Amazon Linux not affected. Kali Linux updated between March 26 and Fedora 41 and 41 Rawhide. So it's not in a lot of places. But still interesting nonetheless. The whole attack. I'm waiting to do a debrief. People are wildly speculating all the time and pointing fingers, and I'd rather wait till the dust settles. The most important thing is that we found it and we understand the method by which they were injecting the commands. It has been stopped. The account has been, well, the accounts, and then probably just one account that looks like it was related to who's been suspended. And that's great for now. So the immediate threat is done. Speculating doesn't help, but strong investigative work and then putting controls in place and seeing how this could have been done better is definitely the way we want to see going forward. I did like this as well. So let me pull this tweet up. Because there's, once again, back to the wild speculating people, but someone who actually took the time to say something good. I just like this quote. The way the campaign is falling apart under scrutiny is to be expected. They did not build a campaign to resist investigation. They built a campaign to avoid investigation, and they were successful. At no point in the campaign did they raise suspicion. It was just bad luck. Yeah, that's a really good point, I think, made about this entire thing. It's definitely one of those type of situations that I'm glad we found it. It got found by luck, but wow, one of those, tripped over it type of things. You know what I mean? It's definitely wild. And everyone's asking how many more of these are out there. I don't know. You'll always be checking it. We always have to be very on guard about this. There always has to be levels of auditing. The fact that there's a point, if I understand this correctly, and this is where I'm not speculating, I'm just making sure I'm recalling what I read, that it was failing a certain test and the developer said, well, just don't run that test. And that is what should have raised more flags, but someone was able to, that's what got them further along, is the fact that that happened. Someone went ahead and said, yeah, you can just turn those tests off, which is not what you want. Not at all what you want. Catching up on my messages. There we go. My process for pull requests is to review only the things that I expect to change that are actually changed. Well, that's where it's so fuzzy, is because they were able to embed that secondary stage loader that also only pulled that extra data under certain circumstances. That's what made this such a tricky one. This is not an easy, one. It was definitely great levels. I mean, years of obfuscation is what's wild. Of the attempts took a long time, the stacking of attempts to be able to get to where they were. That made it really interesting. But yeah, it definitely sent a lot more people thinking. The other part that sends a lot of people thinking is that all of this occurs and how damaging this is to the industry of technology. But then you're like, oh yeah, that's just some developer doing one thing. We keep coming back to the XKCD comic, that the entire internet is supported by some dude in Nebraska, or some dev working somewhere contributing some code that's critical to everything, and that dev not getting much support. These large companies that benefit from open source kind of need to take a step back. Well, maybe we should audit this better, and maybe we should pay some of the people better, and put some more people on things that are supporting this critical infrastructure. I don't remember. I think one of the developers does a couple things, but I don't know what one developer did, but the other one does. One of them does have a website. What did they do? Oh, there's so many. Which, by the way, let me just drop this on you too. This is what I'm looking at, and I'll share it. Man, there's been a lot more added. These are the links I sent. That's the nice thing, is because they're not static. These are still ongoing discussions of people tracing everything out. This person has their website. I don't know what they do. They have this site here. This is one of the developers. The other one, I don't know much about. But it's kind of cool. They're now tearing down the payload, which I think is pretty cool. Like I said, I'll wait till I'm not that good at reverse engineering things. It's not my skill. I will read this work when it's done by other people who are working tirelessly at it. Let's see. To do. So many to do's in here. And more people poking. Matter of fact, one of the graphics I've seen come by in here, people have been making some of these graphics, which I think is kind of cool. Kind of walking through the history of it. But I haven't validated this is true. I just seen this graphic and it looked cool. Hey, can I see that merging VMs from VMware has gotten easier? Well, I don't use VMware, so I'm not exactly sure what's gotten easier about it. Bernie Robertson mentioned one of them ran commits in the kernel past. They're scrambling to audit those commits now. Interesting. Professionally, I try to keep a copy of the tools we need for our operation and local repos, and then I build those for deployment. Doesn't prevent all threat, but helps. Yes. Yeah, supply chain compromise stuff is huge, and definitely it's something. It's where the attacks are going. We've gotten really good at a lot of other things, so the threat actors focus in on what they can get to, and well, this is that place. How do we get to the supply chain? Man, there's a lot of discussion on there. A lot of reading. I'll wait till it's all done before I read all that. That's how I feel about it. Fun stuff. Fun stuff. Well, I think I'll wind this down here. This was lots of fun. Glad everyone there. So yeah. Oh, you feel bad for the original XC dev. He was frustrated taking other contributions. Yeah. Oh, arm's fine. That all healed back up. So I'm good. Matter of fact, that's actually what I was working on today. Was I was playing with one of my motorcycles. The Honda really jams in. I was adding some more stuff to it. That's where the battery is, man. They've got it really jammed in there. I was adding some more accessories to my Honda, and yeah, they don't make them easy to work on. They like to see how tight they can get it, I guess. I don't know. But all right, thanks everyone for joining. Awesome hanging out with everyone, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.